Happy New Year, everybody, and Tony here with my review of Puccini's La Boheme with conductor Massimo Zanetti, which I saw at the Staatsoper unter den Linden. Before I start with this review, I would love to thank Evelyn Novak, who sang Musetta, for the free ticket. So I wish you and your family a very prosperous and happy New Year, and I hope you enjoy my review. The main reason why I caught this production for the second time was because I wanted to see Anna Princeva and Stefan Pop, who sang Mimi and Rodolfo respectively. These two singers were very well known for their really ambitious repertoire given the roles they've been singing in. Starting off with Anna Princeva as Mimi, she has been very well known for singing both lyric soprano roles such as Mimi and Micaela to the more heavy spinto roles such as Elisabetta di Valois. As I heard her tonight, I thought she was a decent lyric soprano. She was able to emit this young womanhood in Mimi, and she was able to do a fine job with the chest tones that she was able to navigate. However, there were a few reservations that I had for her in terms of her vocal production. While she had the chest tones, there were occasions where she was rather hesitant in being fully committed to singing those chest tones, as there were occasions that her lower register sounded hollow, which sounded kind of unappealing, especially when she sang the higher notes. And when she reached the higher registers, there were times that she sounded rather shrill. And this was also because of the coordination of head voice and chest voice that seemed almost disjointed. But regardless of the flaws that she had in terms of her voice, she was able to give off such a committed performance of Mimi. Committed in the sense that she was able to soldier on, and she was able to not waver even as the evening went on. So I still have to give her credit for what she was able to do with Mimi in terms of what she was able to produce with her lyric soprano voice. I just hope that Anna Princeva remains in the lyric soprano repertoire and keeps developing her technique the right way and not be tempted by the much heavier roles. I'm very sure that if she sticks within the lyric soprano repertoire with roles such as Mimi, Micaela, Liu, Magda from La Rondine, Mistress Alice Ford from Falstaff, Blanche de la Force from Le Dialogue du Carmelite, and Mélisande from Péléas et Mélisande, she can definitely have a long career. So here's hoping that Anna Princeva will continue to grow as a singer, and here's hoping that she will continue to use her lyric soprano voice, which has a lot of potential to grow and polish and shine even further. Stefan Pop, who sang Rodolfo, also had such an ambitious repertoire, with roles such as Nemorino from L'Elisir d'Amore, Roberto de Vereux, and even Poglione from Norma. I did hear a couple of samples of him on YouTube, and I thought he was quite good in terms of what he was able to produce in his lyric tenor voice. While I also thought he did a decent job as Rodolfo in terms of what he was able to produce vocally and what he was able to do as a singing actor, I thought that there were some reservations I had with Stefan Pop in terms of his singing abilities. First of all, yes, he was able to sing with sensitivity. However, there were occasions where that sensitive singing at best could turn into crooning at worst when it came to him whispering some of the lines. And I thought that he could do a lot more with his voice because he does have a naturally nice lyric tenor voice that continues to grow with age and that also has potential to keep on shining. It's also because I have at my disposal all the great Italianate tenors of the past. Voices like Giacomo Lauri Volpi, Giovanni Zanatello, Giovanni Martinelli, Enrico Caruso, Alessandro Bonci, Fernando De Lucia, and Beniamino Gigli, just to name a few. Those tenors had beautiful voices that also rang throughout both the lower registers as well as the higher registers. And every time they sang, they had sufficient emotion in their voice because of their sterling technique, thus combining strong head voice with equally strong chest tones to make their voices ring all throughout. With Stefan Pop's case, the tendency to croon also made him suffer in terms of him trying to sing more forte or even louder in the more dramatic moments. And he also did take some time to fully warm up his voice until the very final act, which I thought was his strong point. The ending of La Boheme was when he threw everything in, especially with his weeping that Mimi has finally died because he's lost the woman that he loved. And I thought that he was able to give probably the most convincing and most heart-wrenching performance in that very moment. So that was one moment that made me root for him. Nevertheless, what I also noticed about Stefan Pop was that he also had the tendency to sing nasally, which sounded kind of unattractive. And as I stated before, it's kind of a shame because he has a naturally lovely lyric tenor voice that I do not want to hear waste away anytime soon. And given the repertoire that he's had, especially one that is rich with ambition, I still hope that he continues to go from strength to strength. And I still hope that he continues to build up his instrument very well, because that is a nice voice right there with a lot of potential to keep on shining and to even gain in squillo. And even in his duet with Anna Princeva or Suave Fanciulla, there were times that they were drowned out by the orchestra. However, I still have to salute Stefan Pop for soldiering on throughout the evening, especially when he was able to throw himself in the final moment of La Boheme when he was crying, Mimi, Mimi, after he finds out that she is dead. So I do hope he continues to develop his technique in the right way and also stay within the lyric tenor repertoire, because Stefan Pop's voice has a natural, fine quality in it. And that lyric tenor voice of his does have potential to keep on shining, to keep on glowing, and to get even stronger than ever. Perhaps the standout for the evening was none other than Evelyn Novak as Musetta. I was just as excited to see her as I was excited to see Anna Princeva and Stefan Pop. And she definitely wowed me over as Musetta, to the point where I thought that she was the best performer of the evening. I have seen this lyric soprano go from strength to strength in every performance I saw her in. Whether it was Nayade from Ariadne auf Naxos, Jenny from The Rise and Fall of Mahagani, or even Entchen from Der Freischütz. She was definitely a soprano that I had to applaud every single time I saw her on stage because of her unabashed commitment and, of course, the technique that she was able to sharpen and polish with every performance she was in. What I always loved about Evelyn Novak was that she had this beautiful lyric soprano voice, quite reminiscent of Mirella Freni, albeit younger sounding and rather spirited. She also had a darling stage presence that made her radiate so beautifully as Musetta. And it should also be no surprise that she also sang Mimi in a couple of European opera houses. Heck, I would have also loved to see Evelyn Novak as Mimi because she would have also been such a knockout in that role. Maybe in the future when Boheme ends up being performed once again at the Staatsoper unter den Linden, that I do hope that she will also tackle Mimi and sing her heart out in that particular role. In fact, I would even say that Evelyn Novak should have sung Mimi, but I digress. She's also a lyric soprano that I do hope remains within the lyric soprano repertoire instead of overstretching her voice to extremely taxing roles, because I do not want to hear her voice destroyed. She's already conquered Mimi, Musetta, and Micaela. I would love to see her do a lot more lyric soprano roles such as Melisande from Peleas and Melisande, Mignon from Ambroise Thomas Mignon, Louise from Gustave Charpentier's Louise, Alice from Meyerbeer's Robert le Diable, and even Berthe from Meyerbeer's Le Prophète, just to name a few wonderful roles for a lyric soprano. So I have to give my hat off to Evelyn Novak for a job wonderfully done, especially when she was able to make Musetta radiate both vocally and dramatically. Her stage partner, Adam Kutny, was Marcello, and I also saw him go from strength to strength, going from the character parts to finally singing a leading man. And I also believe that his voice has a lot of potential to keep on growing. The baritone color is there, but there were occasions that he was barking instead of singing, because who I have in my ears for ideal Marcellos would be Lawrence Tibbett, Leonard Warren, and Robert Merrill, just to name a few. Oh, and lest I forget about Gian Giacomo Guelfi, one of my most favorite Italian baritones of all time, and lest I forget about Tito Gobbi, Tita Ruffo, and Riccardo Stracciari. Adam Kutny had a nice, sufficiently dark quality to his baritone voice, but there were occasions where he was barking. And in terms of his theatricality, there were occasions where I thought that he was rather frigid, but he did get better later on in the opera, and his voice as well as theatricality improved. So he did a decent job as Marcello, but I do hope that he continues to grow in the right way, because there's a lot of potential for his voice to specialize in a lot of the leading baritone roles. And roles I would definitely like to hear him in the future would be Sharpless from Madame Butterfly, Hamlet from Ambroise Thomas Hamlet, and even Oel from Meyerbeer's Dinora. There's a lot of potential for Adam Kutny to keep on growing in the right way, and I would definitely love to see his voice go from strength to strength with everything that he's got. Carles Pachon was also good as Schonar. Yes, in my ears, I do have my personal favorite Schonar in Matteo Manugera because of how sterling and how strong his technique was. However, I still have to give a lot of kudos and praise to Carles Pachon for singing this role with everything he got. Yes, his voice could grow in depth. Yes, his voice could grow in richness, in chestiness, and in squillo. But I still have to give him props where it's due. He was able to have a sufficiently fine timbre, and he was also able to project really well. I pray that he does not abuse his instrument, because there's a lot of potential for this voice to keep on growing, especially when he has a bright future ahead of him. So in terms of Carles Pachon as Schonar, he did a good job, but I'm sure that he will continue to keep on growing as a singer. David Ostrek as Colina was alright. He had the tall, dark, and dashing stage presence. He was able to carry himself with sufficient charisma. And I thought that his rendition of Vecchia Zimara was sensitively sung and sung with heart and feeling to the point where this was really his best moment in the entire opera. However, in terms of his voice, I am not too much of a huge fan of it. I don't think it's a bad voice. No. It's just that his vocal production is on the light side and on the more baritonal side when he is branded more as either a bass baritone or a bass. Because I do miss those years when we've had a true basso singing colline. Voices like Jerome Hines, Giorgio Tozzi, Cesare Siepi, Nikolai Gyaurov, Ezio Pinza, Jose Mardones, and Fyodor Chalyapin come to mind. Especially Jerome Hines, Giorgio Tozzi, Cesare Siepi, and Nikolai Gyaurov. Those gentlemen had beautifully well produced and absolutely gorgeously dark voices that I love in many a basso cantante or a basso profondo. And it also says something that bassos, let alone natural bass baritones like Samuel Ramey, had way more depth than David Ostrek, who sang colline. But that is not to discredit his talent as a singer. I still think that he gave a fine performance of Vecchiazzimara, although I have heard better singers in this particular role. Where he lacked in that awesome basso darkness, richness, roundness, and depth, he more than compensated it with a tall, dashing stage presence and loads of theatricality. Although I would love to hear David Ostrek continue to develop his voice in the right way, because it is a naturally fine instrument, even though his vocal production is more on the baritone side than on the truly bass side. Nevertheless, he was still able to emit a tender, charismatic, and quite imposing colline in terms of his stage presence. Olaf Berg was serviceable as both Benoit and Alcindoro, although I do miss that vocal depth and darkness found in singers such as Fernando Correnna and Carlo Badioli. And one tenor I have to give major props to in terms of the small, thankless, yet rather fun part of Parpignol was Johann Grogius, who has a fine lyric tenor voice, and I would love to see this young lyric tenor grow and grow in terms of his repertoire as well as his experience on stage. So while this singing was quite hit or miss, I still have to give major props to Evelyn Novak for her stirring portrayal of Musetta. She shone like the brightest of stars in that evening, and I have to give her a lot of kudos and a lot of high marks for her in terms of what she was able to do with this vivacious Parisian grisette. Massimo Zanetti's conducting does have some moments where he could have helped out the singers a little bit more, especially when they were hitting their high notes, or if they were singing over an orchestra. Especially in O Suave Fanciulla, where the orchestra totally devoured Anna Princeva and Stefan Pop as they were singing forte. Nevertheless, he did find some tender moments to make sure that the singers were able to follow through, and there were some moments of excitement to be found. So at least he was able to do what he had to do for the singers in the orchestra, and the chorus and the orchestra of the Staatsoper unter den Linden managed to do their roles rather well and were able to keep the evening going. So while I had some reservations with some of the singers, I still had to give high marks to Evelyn Novak for pulling everything through. That's not to say that the likes of Anna Princeva, Stefan Pop, Adam Kutny, Carles Pachon, and David Ostrek were bad. No, they were not bad at all. They were able to do decent jobs and serviceable jobs in their roles, and I would love to see them grow a lot more, as well as gain a lot more technical proficiency, so that when they hit those really great heights, they will keep on developing the best way they can. And I encourage them to never give up, as well as keep on fighting the good fight. And for those of you who caught this production of La Boheme, what did you think of it? Did you feel that Evelyn Novak carried the evening all the way through? Was there something you liked about Anna Princeva's and Stefan Pop's portrayals of Mimi and Rodolfo respectively? Was there another singer who stole their thunder? Or did you feel like the entire thing was not really to your liking? Comment below and let me know. Well, that's it for my review of Puccini's La Boheme at the Staatsoper unter den Linden. Tune in tomorrow for my tribute to the Popeye animated New Year short, Let's Celebrate. So until then, Happy New Year, everybody!